Hey, fourth grade. This is our final grammar video for fourth grade. Do I hear shouting? Do I hear cheering? Probably. This is the end of Shirley Grammar for fourth grade. Today we're going to talk just a very few minutes about one of the references in the back of your book. So you're going to need your grammar book. If you don't have it with you, go ahead and pause and go find it. And I'll wait for you right here. All right, we are in reference 65. Let's see, that is on your page 128. And then we're going to work a little bit today on page 79. So we're skipping a whole bunch of pages in your book. Not because they're not important, but because we only have so much time left. Typically at this point in the school year, we're completing 2 grammar pages every week, and I just didn't want to send you that much at home. So I would advise that you go ahead and look through everything in your book that we didn't cover and review it, read through the references, look through the reference sections, kind of try to piece those things together. There's some alphabetization that would benefit you. There's a section about using the reference sections in the library and the reference sections in books. That would benefit you as well. There's a whole section about using a card catalog that's rather archaic. I don't even know if libraries have those anymore because everything's on your computer. So you don't really need to do that section. But there's a lot of good in your book that would really help you in your writing and just in school in general. So go ahead and look through the rest of your grammar book. I would even challenge you to try to do most of the pages that are left in it sometime this summer, just kind of off and on when you don't have anything else to do and you just really crave working on grammar. Like that's going to happen. Anyway, page 128, reference 65, and it's talking to you about how to read for information. Now, I know one of the things that was a positive for many of you with being home this last quarter is that we didn't have Sat 10. But you will have it next year, and you will have to take standardized tests over the years many times. So you need to know how to read a passage and then answer questions. And if you think back to the last several years of Sat 10, I'm sure you remember sections where you would read a short story and then you would have to answer questions about that story. And then if you think back to the last several years at CCA where we used to do McCall Crabs, where you would read a story and have 10 comprehension questions afterwards. I'm sure you remember those as well. This is a similar type reading skill. So let's go ahead and look at reference 65. It's called How to Read Subject Matter Material. So this is when you're reading something not just for pleasure, where you're reading a story, but when you're reading it trying to find information. And of course this is useful when you're writing research papers too, because you're reading trying to find useful information. And so there are 4 steps that are outlined in reference 65. The first one, it says, is to skim, and this is to be done very quickly. You just look over the story and you try to figure out like what it's about, what it's telling you about. So you're going to do it very quickly. You're going to look at the title. You're going to look at maybe the topic sentence, maybe a detail or two. Kind of gives you an idea of what it's going to be about. So with that said, look down to the bottom of that reference to the section titled Frogs and Toads. And so if you look at that section and you look over it really quickly, can you tell just glancing at it very quickly without reading all of the sentences, what is that whole passage about? There's a section 1, a section 2. I am looking at it, I'm reading none of the sentences, none of the details. I'm noticing the titles. The titles are How Frogs and Toads Are Alike and How Frogs and Toads Are Different. I'm looking for highlighted words or underlined words. I'm seeing the word habitat. I see amphibians. I see tadpoles. Those are all words that are bolded in this section. So if I were to ask you really quickly, what is this section about without reading it, I think you would all be able to tell me it's about how frogs and toads have some similarities and then they also have some differences. Excuse me. So now I want you to look at step 2. Now that we know what we're going to read about frogs and toads and how they're alike and how they're different, let's look at step 2. So go back up to the top of the reference 65. It says question. Turn the headings into questions so that you will then have a purpose for reading. So look at this section 1, title, How Frogs and Toads Are Alike. How could we turn that into a question? You could do that by simply changing around the order of the words. How are frogs and toads alike? And so I would know now, just by changing the title into a question, what I'm going to look for in that paragraph. I'm going to look for ways that frogs and toads are alike. So now look at section 2. Section 2 has a title of How Frogs and Toads Are Different. Well, how can we make that into a question? Again, rearrange the word order. How are frogs and toads different? And now we know what we're looking for in this paragraph. We're going to look for ways that they are different. All right, step 1 was skim. We looked over it very quickly to get an idea of what we're going to read about. Step 2 was question. Turn the title into a question. So we know now what we're looking for. How are frogs and toads alike? How are frogs and toads different? Look at step 3 now. Read. It says read slowly to find and understand details about the topic headings. The purpose at this point is to read slowly. Look back at step number 1, skim. It says do that very quickly. Don't take time to read all of the details. Step 2 was to turn the title into a question. Now step 3 is to read slowly and carefully. So you're going to read through those 2 sections. Pause the video and read those 2 sections carefully and slowly, then restart the video. All right, did you read them? You should have lots of ideas now about how frogs and toads are alike and about how they are different. Now look at step 4. It says scan. Now scan and skim sound very similar, and honestly they are very similar. You're going to do this one quickly as well. We skimmed quickly. We turned a title into a question fairly quickly. We read slowly. Now we're going to scan over the section again quickly. We're going to make sure that we remember the answers to our questions. So you're going to look back at section 1. How are frogs and toads alike? And make sure you know the answer. And then look at section 2. How are frogs and toads different? Make sure you know the answer. Now you're ready to answer questions about the passage. So turn back to page 79 in your book. Turn to page 79. This will be the last grammar page that you have to complete this year. And it's really fairly simple because we just did the reading together. And there aren't any sentences to classify this week. We're finished classifying sentences. If you would like to do some more practice, you can always go back and do all the rest of them in your book, but we are finished officially doing them. So look now at page 79. Exercise 1 says read the questions below and underline 1 or 2 key words. You may not use the word frog or toad as your key words. Scan for the answers in the article in reference 65. Write only the section number where you will find the answer. Well, let's go ahead and do the first one together. It says, what is one way that frogs and toads are alike? So what are some key words in number 1? Alike, for sure, because we're looking for things that tell us how frogs and toads are alike. It says to underline 1 or 2 key words, and we can't underline frogs or toads because they're all about frogs and toads. So we've underlined the word alike. Everyone take your pencil and underline the word alike. Now look at reference 65. You might need to put a sticky note on that page 128 so you can flip back and forth from page 79 to page 128. So if you flip back over to that reference, what section would tell us how frogs and toads are alike? Section 1, that is correct. So in the box under the word section, write a number 1. Let's look at number 2. What is one way that frog and toads are different? What's the key word in that question? If you said different, you are right. Everyone underline the word different. Where would we find some information that tells us about how frogs and toads are different? Section 1 or section 2? If you said section 2, you are right. Write a number 2 in that next box. Now, numbers 3 and 4, I want you to do on your own. You can pause the video, go ahead and answer them now, and then start the video up. Or you can just wait to finish them after the video is over. Look now to exercise 2. It says write the answers from the answer list in the blanks below and put the number of the section where it was found in the box on the left. All this is fill in the blank, and you have a word bank. Each word will only be used one time. Read the question, look at the blanks, see if you can figure out what words go in those blanks, and then what section did you find that information in on reference 65. Remember, you're going to have to turn back and forth to page 128 and to 79. Let's look at number 5 together. Amphibians can live on blank and in blank. Look at reference 65. Look at section 1, look at section 2. Can you find the words that go in those blanks? Amphibians can live on blank and in blank. The first blank is the word land. Amphibians can live on land. And then in the second blank, water. They can also live in water. Did we find that answer in section 1 or section 2? We found them on section 1, so put a 1 in the box. Do you see how that works? Complete the rest of that section, and then we'll look at section 3, at exercise 3. Using the article in reference 65, write the answers in the blanks below. Put the number of the section where it is found on the box, in the box on the left. Number 11 says, give 2 ways that frogs and toads are alike. There are lots of ways in that section. Just pick 2 of them. Make sure you write them in complete sentences. And then number 12, give 2 ways that frogs and toads are different. Again, pick any of the ways that they are different. Write 2 of them. Make sure you have 2 complete sentences. And we're done. That was pretty simple for a final grammar lesson of the year. Make sure you finish the whole page and get that turned in by the last day of school. This is your last grammar lesson. Make sure you keep that grammar book. Work in it over the summer if you have time. Have a great day. I hope to see you soon.